Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar tonight. I've got a really exciting topic coming up for you all tonight about creating balanced meals on a budget. And we've got two of our very expert nutritionists here with us who are going to be going into a little bit more detail on how you can create those balanced meals. So Tom, Georgie, would you like to introduce yourselves and tell the audience a little bit about you and why you're interested in this topic?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Tom. I'm a senior health coach here at Second Nature and a registered nutritionist. And I'm really passionate about this because, one, I have a family, I have kids, and the cost of living obviously impacts us more than we think, and food prices get higher and higher each time we seem to go to the supermarket. And I feel like it gets harder to balance meals when we're trying to also balance our money as well. And so I'm passionate about it because it's still doable, and I just like sharing and helping around this area to all the people I coach.
Hi guys, I'm Georgie, a registered nutritionist and a health coach at Second Nature. I think I love this topic because I used to be a professional chef, so I absolutely love cooking, and I'm always like would love to encourage people to cook as much as they can. And I know that one of the barriers for this can be kind of thinking about budgeting our meals. So if we can try and give you some advice and practical tips to help you with that, and then you can carry on cooking and enjoying those meals, that's great for me. So I'm excited to be here and delivering this webinar for you with Tom.
Amazing. Right, guys, shall we get things kicked off?
Yeah. Absolutely. Great. Cool. So just before we start, we wanted to share a little bit about what we do here at Second Nature. We exist as a company to help create healthier habits in people's lives to overall improve people's well-being. So we're here to change people's minds about losing weight and help you make realistic changes to your lifestyle without any fads or restrictions. And we use behavioral science to retrain your mind to make healthy choices automatic. And so these can stick in the long run. And our webinars are just one way of helping educate people to make more informed choices. So today we're going to consider the following areas. We're going to be looking at what is impacting balanced meals and budgets. We're going to look at how we can try our best to balance meals during this time. And then Georgie's going to share some practical tips. And then we're going to have a session on some questions and hopefully some answers. So buckle in, we are going to get started now. There's going to be a poll in a couple of slides time, which you can get involved with, and we'd love to have you answer and see how you experience budgeting and balanced meals. Okay, so what is impacting balanced meals and budgets? Well, we're going to first of all give you some statistics, and the first one is from 2022. We're looking at 2022 and 2023 because the 2024 data has not come out yet. So in 2022, the Office of National Statistics shared that in the last 7 years, food prices and inflation rates have increased dramatically, rising to nearly around 20%. But luckily, it's dropped since, and it's currently sitting around 7%. But that's still much higher than what it was in August 2017, which was around 2%. So things have obviously increased. And although the inflation rate has slowed down for us right now, food prices have continued to stay high, which then puts a strain on our finances, and even more when the cost of living is higher than ever as well. And so just a couple more bits of data here. We've got the 40% of people spending more money on food than usual. And a whopping 91% of people said that food prices were contributing the most to the cost of living crisis at the moment. So there's obviously stuff going on here. But in another survey in October 2023, the BBC Good Food Nation did a study, and they basically found that nearly 30% of people consumed less nutritious food compared to previously due to costs. Around 20% opted for cheaper, more ready-based meals and more processed foods. And nearly, again, 20% of people have reduced their cooking from scratch, which, when you're trying to lead a balanced, healthy lifestyle, can make things a little bit more tricky. So just to summarize those bits of data there. So in general, food is staying at a higher price. We're spending more each week and we're reaching for more convenient foods. This isn't the most hopefully we can get you into a place where you can feel more confident in being able to balance your meals without breaking the bank. So Jem is going to launch our first poll. You're going to see it pop up on your Zoom screen. If you would like to answer it, and then we can kind of discuss it a bit more as we go along. So the question is, how confident do you currently feel around creating balanced meals on a budget? Do you feel very confident? Do you feel somewhat confident or not very confident? So we're going to leave this open for a bit and then Jem will close it and then we can have a look at the data.
I think we've got the majority of people saying that they're feeling somewhat confident at the moment.
Okay, cool. So
and then quite similar stats for very confident and not very confident.
Okay. So hopefully over the course of this webinar, then we can actually increase your confidence. And so we can step away from this webinar and you can make some improvements to your routine and to your budgeting and even balancing your meals. Great. Thanks, Jem. So when we consider balancing meals, it's really important to ensure we are doing so to help us control our hunger, our cravings, our food choices, and ideally, when we do this, we're going to stay fuller for longer and we're going to stabilize our blood sugar levels. So overall, we're actually benefiting our long-term health more effectively, but then we're also not having to reach for different foods or snacks that perhaps might tip that balance a bit more. So over the course of the next few slides, there's going to be some examples of some balanced plates. They differ each time, but we're going to talk through them. And hopefully you can use these as ways of either balancing your plate with like a visual guide, or we're going to share some other areas as well that you could try. So ideally, to balance our meals, we're going to do this through prioritizing the consumption of whole foods, which are rich in protein, in fat, in complex carbohydrates and vegetables. We're going to be limiting ultra-processed foods, which are rich in refined carbohydrates and added sugars. Ideally, we want to try and make your water as your choice of drink. And we want to be eating until we're comfortably full, not over full, and eating protein-rich snacks if you're eating, if there is a longer than 5-hour gap between meals. So that might sound a lots of words. However, using these guides, we can help you here a bit. So in this first one here, you can see there is a balanced plate model, which has complex carbohydrates. So if we look at the left-hand side of this plate, we can see half a plate of vegetables. We can see in the top right, a quarter of the plate as a protein source. The bottom right is a quarter of carbohydrates, which are complex. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a little spoon with some oil. That would be your fat source. So that is a balanced plate, what we'd like to see. But actually, sometimes what we see is, or we can consider, is a complex carbohydrate-free meal too. So same principles, but we're actually going to be increasing the variety and the proportions of vegetables. We're going to be pushing towards 2/3 of a plate as vegetables, 1/3 of a plate as protein, and then we've got our fat source on the side as well. But sometimes balancing our meals can be slightly more tricky, especially when there's some cultural differences to food choices or serving proportions. And so these are just three of quite a few of our culturally diverse food balanced plate models that we have. So if you are on the program or you want to join the program and you eat culturally, then we more than likely and hopefully have a balanced plate model that would fit your culture and your lifestyle. So if you're on the program, please speak to your health coach and they'll be able to share these and support you a bit more. But if you haven't and you want to join up, then obviously we have the facilities and the resources to support you more as well. The next 4 images here they're still technically part of our balance plate modeling. However, we know that sometimes people don't work as effectively as others when it looks at visually versus more practical ways. So although there's a bit of a pun here, this is a very handy way to use your hands as a way to consider like serving sizes, we can use our fist, our palm, our thumb, or both hands to balance a plate without having to kind of stick to a visual guide. So we're going to go starting at the top left. You can see there is a fistful of carbohydrates. Bottom left, there is a thumb's worth of fat. The top right, we've got a palm's worth of protein. And the bottom right, we've got 2 hands cupped together, which would be the equivalent of your vegetables. So combining all 4 of those into your food prep will help you balance a meal without kind of having to kind of keep looking back at different resources. And this can be really, really helpful if you have other members in the family at home. So something like kids who obviously they eat less than what an adult would, and their hands are smaller than an adult. And so actually it can become a really good way to adjust serving sizes for individuals and also get potentially the kids involved in cooking or serving up dishes as well. Now, there's one final area that we are going to consider before we move on, and this is a small little plug, but we have paired up with a wonderful lady who has created a tool called the Carb Spoon. And we sell this via our website. So as I said, sorry, little plug, but shop.secondnature.io. And you can use this when cooking or measuring to understand how many carbohydrates are a suitable serving. And if you buy it through our website, then you get Second Nature specific guidelines, which will help you more. So we've obviously spoken about some balanced plate models. We have spoken about the Carb Spoon and how we can use our hands as a handy way to balance our plate. And perhaps you might want to try some of these, all of these, or some of them to see if they help you balancing your meals more effectively. But sometimes meals may not be so clear cut, and the balanced plate model isn't always applicable. So for example, if we're having stews, soups, or porridge, things might get mixed all in together during the cooking process, and it might be harder to then make sure they're well balanced. However, if you're on the program, you can obviously speak to your health coach to have more support or get some more examples, but we're going to run through some today here. So to start with, we're going to look at breakfast, and in comparison to lunch or dinner, breakfast options are often based on carbohydrates and may not fit the balanced plate model as easily as the other 2 meals. So reducing the serving sizes of your complex carbohydrates, so such as oats, and adding in a source of protein, such as Greek yogurt, and adding in some fats as well, so maybe a tablespoon of crushed nuts, will help you fuel yourself better throughout the morning and throughout the day, and help you also improve your blood sugar levels and the control, especially over the course of the morning. So breakfast is also less likely to contain vegetables, and that's actually okay. You might want to have some vegetables with breakfast, and that's also fine. But remember to think about the bigger picture and how you can balance your meals across the day, not just individual meals. So if you don't have any vegetables at breakfast time, you can aim to have plenty at lunch and dinner. So looking at this infographic here, we can see we've got some overnight oats, and you can see we've got the oats themselves, so the serving of complex carbohydrates. We've got some berries on top that are providing vitamins and fiber. We've got some nuts for a fat source, and it's made with milk and Greek yogurt for protein. And then the bottom one is a veggie omelette, where we've got eggs providing a source of protein. We've bulked it out with some vegetables, and it's cooked in butter or fat. So we've got 2 balanced breakfasts there. And it's just kind of picking those areas out to make sure you're hitting all the right boxes before you have your meal. So when it comes to lunch, there's 2 examples here. So we've got the bean stew. So we've got the kidney beans as a source of protein and complex carbohydrates. We've got tinned tomatoes and some extra veg. We've got a chicken breast for some protein, and we've used cooking oil as our fat source. And in the nutty Asian chicken salad at the bottom, we've got chicken for protein. We've got quinoa for our complex carbohydrates. We've got peanut butter as our fat source, and we've again bulked it out with vegetables. And the final 2 examples are your dinners. So we have the top one, which is a Caesar salad. We've got lots of green leafy veg. We've got olive oil for a fat source, and we've got a chicken as our source of protein. And in the bottom one, we've got the spiced chicken and vegetable wrap. We've got the complex carbohydrate wholemeal wrap. We've filled it with vegetables again. We've got chicken as our protein, and we've used cream in it to provide a fat source. So all 6 of these meals typically are all kind of put together. You might also potentially find them if you go to people's houses or go to restaurants or have a meal out. These are similar meals that you might get, and it's a good way to just visually start to pick out, is this meal balanced, or do I need to maybe add something to it or change it where possible to make sure it's balanced as much as we can. Now, we know this can be a lot and quite a lot to absorb, and many fad diets make you stick to strict rules. And we want you to ideally avoid this. And by setting some by using these guides and setting some kind of guidelines rather than strict rules, you can use these as a way to make sustainable long-term habit changes that gives you freedom from all of those rules. So obviously these visual guides and being able to balance meals on site or using your hands or different tools can be a really helpful way to balance your plates at home and away from home, especially when we're at restaurants too. So in summary, we know that food, as we mentioned before, is more expensive. We are spending more money and we are choosing more convenient foods, but it's also sometimes trickier to balance our meals every single time, but it's definitely possible, either through the efforts, through the balanced plate models, your own motivation, or Georgie is going to share some more practical tips now for you.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so I'm just going to go through some practical tips, which even if you take 1 or 2 away, hopefully can make a difference to your spending when you're shopping and trying to balance your meals. So when we shift our diet, there's always going to be sometimes a bit of an initial startup if we're, as I said, changing the way we're eating, and we're building up our pantry with things like olive oil or dried herbs and spices. But generally, these things will last for a long time. So it actually will work out cheaper. But they're quite important things to keep kind of variety within our foods. And 2 habits that we talk a lot about on the program is meal prep and batch cooking. So meal prep is a really helpful way. It allows us to buy ingredients in bulk. It reduces the need for eating out. It helps to avoid food waste, and enables you to plan cost-effective meals in advance. So this is an example of a meal plan, which these are all our recipes. So do ask your health coach for them. But there's some ways within this meal plan that are budget effective. So smoothies are a really delicious, nutritious way to start your morning. They're quite quick and convenient. And you can use I have bananas and they're going brown, rather than maybe sometimes making a banana bread, I'll peel them, put them in a sandwich bag and put them in the freezer. And then that is so perfect for a smoothie. It also keeps it nice and cold, which I love. And then I like to overlap ingredients too. So I've used yogurt in the smoothie. I like to use yogurt in my dressings. A little bit of garlic, lemon, olive oil, lovely. So have a think about that as well when you're within your meal plan. Like, can you streamline an ingredient? And then if we take the peri peri chicken recipe that we have, we use a whole chicken here. So this is another great tip, is to buy bigger cuts of meat. So when we buy sliced meat, we're paying for the preparation of that meat, the labor of it, and we're also probably going to be paying for more packaging. So if you buy whole chickens or whole cuts of meat, this can go further. You can get quite a lot off a chicken bone, and the carcass you can also then use if you're wanting to make some stock. Also, just don't discount cheaper cuts of meat, because whilst they're a bit tougher if you were just to kind of maybe cook them straight away, but they're perfect for putting in like soups or slow cooking them and in stews, because over that cooking period of time, they are going to become really tender and delicious. So you could have a think about those kind of cheaper cuts too. And if you were to cost up this meal plan, it's around £17 if you were to buy the ingredients. And that can seem like a lot just for 3 meals, but it's not just 3 meals. You will probably get about 12 portions of food across all of these ingredients. And then that works out about £1.40 for each portion of food. So we can sometimes go to supermarkets and get quite carried away maybe with meal deals or kind of reduced microwave meals potentially, but they can seem cheap. Maybe they're about £3. But if you were to say you're going to have 3 meals at £3 a day, that's £9. Whereas this, as I just mentioned, is about £1.40 per portion. So it does stretch. And then if we look at this second meal plan here, this is an example of some vegetarian meals. And a lot of costs that when we're doing our shopping can come from animal products, so meats and fishes. So when you are thinking about your meal plan, alternate what you're having. You don't need to have you don't need to have meat or fish every single night. You can get some lovely proteins from vegetarian options. Tofu is a low cost, complete protein. You can use other sources of protein like legumes and beans, and these are really good for bulking out curries or your soups or casseroles. And eggs, my favorite, are a really good, cost-effective, high-quality protein. So within this, if we were to take the chickpea curry, one of my favorite recipes, this I use tinned chickpeas. Tin foods, again, are a really great way to fill out our meals. They're often cheap. They can sit on your shelf for quite a long time. And I've also used frozen spinach within this meal and rice. So again, your kind of dried rices, pastas, legumes, buy those in bulk. And again, this will stretch this meal plan. So again, it works out quite a cheap per portion. So to continue with some more practical tips, before we head out to the shops or we do our online shopping, just have a check of your cupboards, your freezer and your fridge, because you might already have quite a lot of stuff in there that could either make a meal, or you won't need to buy as much because what you already have can contribute to your meal plans for that week. So just have a nosy around before you go out. And then once you've planned your meals for the week, create a shopping list. I love a shopping list. Get a sticky note, write it all down, and then you can basically get to the supermarket, and it's an easier and a faster way of shopping. And it just means that you're going to reduce those impulse buys in the supermarket because you've got a plan and you've got your shopping list, so you're going to stick to it. I find that my shopping bill stacks up and is out of my budget when I'm doing those ad hoc trips, like every 2 or 3 days, because I've not really set out my meal plan, and it's like 15 quid here, £12 there, and it does really add up. So having that meal plan does really, really help. I wish this was something more that the UK really pushed, but I'd love think about eating the seasons. The fruit and vegetables typically when they're in season are cheaper, and they also taste a lot better. So next time you're thinking about going to the shops, check a calendar online, because they will have them available, and check what's in season. I think this month we're coming into asparagus season, which is delicious, really versatile ingredient, rhubarb again, peas, spinach. So do have a look at what's available. And yes, so don't be fooled by brands. That's a massive one. Supermarkets are very strategic. They literally employ people to do this job, to place things around the stores so that you, the consumer, will buy them, so that it's at your eye level or it's in a certain position. So check for the cheaper brands, read the labels, do cost comparisons. Some can appear cheaper, but actually if you look at they always list this with the price, it's per 100 grams or per 100 mils. An example of this would be if you were to buy some yogurt, you might get the 6-pack in little portions, And that can be quite helpful for portion control. But usually the bigger tub, which if you know you're going to go through it, is going to work out cheaper. So do just look at those cost comparisons as well when you're in the shops. Yes, be cautious of best before dates. So use by dates is about safety, whereas best before dates is about quality, not safety. And I think they are changing this now. And I think some products are removing the best before dates because of those reasons. So signaling when food might taste its best is very different to when it needs to be used by. So we can always sometimes tell and use our own intuition, like our own senses of smell, how things feel, how the fruit and vegetable, the texture of it by looking at it as well. So onions sometimes might have a best before date, but actually they can go for a really long time. Like, you know, when it starts to sprout in your kitchen cupboards, maybe it's like you should be using it, but it can go for quite a long time. And it just avoids like throwing away unnecessary food. But with fresh meat and dairy, use by dates should be followed because that's for safety regulations. And just shop with an open mind. Supermarkets sometimes have offers on with their veggies. There's loads of kind of nice foods with tinned fish, frozen products, smoked fish. They're really nutritious and affordable and can be kind of mixed in with some other vegetables and complex carbohydrates to make a really delicious meal. Look at those cheaper cuts of meat as well, and get the loyalty cards because it all does add up. And most supermarkets will provide those as well. So if we just continue with some more practical tips, more for like when we've left the store. If you are on our program, you know that we have over 400 recipes in our catalog, all available in the app, which is amazing. And they've all been curated to be nutritious, delicious, and balanced. So as I said before, I used to be a chef, so I'm always encouraging people to cook as much as you can from home. Enjoy your meals at home a little bit more and maybe not go out so much because you obviously are going to be spending more money there. Data from KPMG found that the typical Brit spends about £641 a year on takeaways. So that's just over £12 a week. Ask your health coach again. We've got a massive list of fakeaways. So if kind of getting a takeaway is something that you do enjoy with your family on the weekend, which is absolutely fine, but maybe occasionally you could think, oh, I'm going to try doing a fakeaway this week and get everyone a bit involved because it can just be actually even more tasty than the takeaways and more satisfying. So do ask your health coach for that. I know we've got a really good list of that for different types of takeaways. Snack smarter. Prepare your own snacks at home. As a nation, the UK, we love to snack, and data from 2019 valued the savory snack market at 3.2 billion. So we do like to snack. So if snacking is something you do within your week and that's in your meal plan, just think about that and how you can prepare that at home. If we're grabbing snacks for convenience, it's often they're not going to be as nutritious as what we're going to be preparing at home. And even snacks which are marketed as healthy probably are not. And there'll be lots of hidden sugars within that. So have a think about that one as well. And if you can, try grow your own garden. I mean, I know it's not available to everyone, but even growing some herbs on your balcony can also be really helpful. If you do have a garden, maybe give this a go because then you've just got this lovely fresh supply of ingredients at your fingertips. And again, something I learned a lot in my chefing days was about storing food. It saved a lot of wastage. So an example is that if you're buying salad leaves, take those out of the salad bag, rinse them, put them in an airtight container with some kitchen roll at the bottom, and they will last much longer, and you won't get that like soggy limp leaf at the bottom of the bag moving forward. So these are, yeah, just some tips for you guys to take away when you're going shopping, when you're at home. Yeah. And we're now going to, oh yeah, just to summarize. Meal planning and batch cooking can be really helpful with our overall expenditure. Shop smart, use supermarket owned brands, check the price per kg to really get that price comparison. Enjoy cooking at home, make staying in than you going out. Try a fake away. Ask your health coach. We have some existing resources around this topic. We even have a 7-day meal plan for a budget. So do ask your health coach for those resources. And think about the resources also available to you. I know there's quite a lot of recipe books based on eating well on a budget. So you could check your local library. Even some charity shops might have those types of books in there, or just look online. So get creative. And now I'm going to pass back to Jem to do our second poll.
Okay, I've just launched that, so you should see that coming up on your screen now. We've got the highest percentage of very confident. It looks like you guys have given some great tips.
Excellent. Well, that's really good to hear. And we'd love to hear if any of you have some questions for us. We are here to answer them for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that, guys. That was really helpful. Do you know what you were saying, Georgie, about the salad leaves and taking them out of the bag? I've never done that before. And as a nutritionist, I thought I would have done something like that. But yeah, interesting. How much longer does it normally last, or do they last when you take them out of the bag?
I think it's because the bag, it's kind of a bit like a greenhouse. So it kind of gets quite moist in the bag. And then they just kind of all get a bit shrivelly. So honestly, they can last me like up to a week more than just even more than that. I haven't actually figured.
I'm gonna try this the next time I go to Tesco. I'm gonna do that because I'm really curious to see how much longer it's gonna last.
Yeah, I don't know. I just sometimes have a thing with like having all the plastic in the fridge as well. I quite like to.
Yeah, for sure. We do have a question in the chat from Jackie, and she has said, "What is a complex carb example?"
Yeah, good question. So in general, there are two different types of carbohydrates. You've got a complex carbohydrate and you've got a simple carbohydrate. So a simple carbohydrate is a very simple sugar that gets absorbed and used very, very quickly. So typically you tend to see it in foods that are sweeter. So you'd have maybe some fruit, maybe kind of like some jelly beans, or even trying to think off the top of my head, some others. But the complex carbohydrates are going to be having added starch that helps slow down the rate of absorption and usage. So you're looking at foods that are more wholemeal based. So you've got your rices, your pastas, your potatoes, sweet potatoes. You've got some of the beans and legumes, and some breads as well, depending on what flour they use. So hopefully that's some good examples. I mean, Jem and Georgie, do you have any other examples you want to also share?
Yeah, I mean, you've given such a great example of complex carbs. I also think it's good to differentiate between simple carbs and complex carbs, because it's something that people get really confused about. And complex carbs are a really, really important part of the diet that many people don't realize. You know, of course, they help us to feel fuller for longer, and they make a part of the balanced plate model. But also you can save a lot of money depending on the type of complex carbs you get. You know, as you were saying, Georgie, with chickpeas, oh my goodness, the amount of tins of chickpeas I've got in my cupboard. and they're like 40-50p, and you can make so many meals out of them. The same with oats. You know, I use oats a lot for breakfast. Our toasted muesli recipe is unreal, and it's such a good breakfast recipe. And again, that's cost effective as well. Oh, we've got some more questions. So Jackie's also said, what can I use as a fat source as I have low fat diet due to gallstones? I think one thing that I would say is that we can't give direct advice when it comes to medical conditions. So Jackie, I would recommend reaching out to your GP about this, and they'll be able to offer some more advice and perhaps refer you to a dietitian as well.
Yeah, that's why we were a little hesitant to reply.
We've got some more questions as well. So Elizabeth has said, I hadn't thought to do that with salad leaves. Me and you both, Elizabeth. How long does avocado last? I got a tip to leave the nut in unused half and wrap in cling film and put in the fridge. It did work, but just wondered how long is the time once the avocado is cut. So I actually do this all the time, and I tend to, because I use half an avocado, and I will put some lemon juice on it with the bit that's got the stone in, and I put it in the Tupperware and put it in the fridge. Normally it's fine for me for about 2 or 3 days. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, that's definitely, if you put some acid like from the like a lemon or lime on the skin, the flesh of the avocado, it definitely lasts longer. And that's also if you're making like a salad and you do the lemon juice, it keeps it stops the avocado going brown. I'm not sure like how the length of time. I've had an avocado floating around in my fridge for like a week, and even if it's brown though, like don't be scared. If you just peel off that bit, the flesh underneath is also green. So unless it's like really horrible, don't eat it. But actually, if you just scrape away the top bit, it should be fine as well. But a specific time, I mean, I think you just eyeball it as well and kind of use your if the texture's gone or if it smells bad. But yeah, lemon juice really helps, and yeah, cling film can obviously help because it will get rid of any air coming into it.
And I suppose it depends on like your fridge. Like if your fridge is at different temperatures to someone else's, or there's more food or less food in it, then obviously it's going to impact how it can store and affect the avocado as well.
Okay, Lorraine has said, what did you mean by the cheaper cuts of meat in the supermarket?
I think I mean stuff like, well, just the stuff that no one really goes for, like chuck steak or brisket. Even like people sometimes just go for chicken breasts, but actually chicken thighs are really delicious as well. So those are just a few examples of kind of those cheaper cuts. It's the stuff which is really basically amazing for stewing as well, which is going to be fun.
I agree, and I think it's all in the way you cook it as well. It makes such a difference to how it turns out.
Yeah, I suppose Georgie spoke earlier about the you pay more for like the preparation and the processing aspect. So what I tend to find is that if a meat is on the bone, or there is a bone or a bigger bit of fat on it, typically it's cheaper.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay, I hope that's helped, Lorraine. Then we've got Kim has said, I don't like eggs, tofu, and some yogurts, so I'm finding it difficult to find more protein sources that are not meat or fish. Most recipes contain egg. I'd like some more protein sources for main meals, please.
Yeah, sure. Sometimes it can be more tricky when our food choices are perhaps more limited or restricted based on dietary preferences or personal preferences. So again, it's very individual. So if you are on the program, please speak to your health coach, because they can spend a bit more time with you personalizing and tailoring your nutrition for you and your preferences. But typically, again, obviously you've got your meats and your fish. But we don't always want to be eating those to try and balance our diet as much as possible. Georgie obviously mentioned some kind of veggie options, but there is obviously tofu, but you said you don't like it, so that's fine. I'm just saying it because other people might be listening on the webinar as well. But then there's tempeh and seitan as well, which is can be really good ways of cheap but veggie protein sources. Some of these products now on the market are almost like not enhanced in protein, but they try and like increase the protein in some of these options. Again, like Georgie said, read the labels, make sure they're not adding lots of different processed ingredients. But
yeah, there's a lot of pea protein pastas and things like that you can now get, which again, yeah, literally just to repeat what Tom said, do a bit of a comparison and also look at the label. If it's got like a ton of ingredients, then it might not be worth it. And actually you're better to go more towards, you know, basing your meals with kind of quinoas, lentils are amazing sources of proteins, chickpeas as well. Those kind of products, which are also quite cheap to purchase. But some are kind of being a bit more advanced now and thinking about the processing of that. So you can kind of also find those ones. Cheese of a bit, I don't know if you said you didn't like cheese. I don't know, but cheese, obviously, the other dairy sources, but just be mindful of those portions too.
And I think it's funny that you're saying about ingredients, because it's something that a lot of us do not look at. And it goes back to what you were saying about being careful with brands, because, you know, products are marketed for us to buy them. And, you know, if they are at Eyeline, then we're buying them. And some Masons put in the chat saying, do you consider sourdough bread a complex carb? Which we do, but it's also really important to look at the type of sourdough bread that you're buying, because my goodness, everyone's jumped on the bandwagon now, and there's so many different types of sourdough. But what I'm noticing when I'm looking at the ingredients in the supermarket is there are additives, added sugar, left, right, and center. So if you are opting for a bread, you know, try and get a whole grain one if you can, and also to try and be like cost effective and save money. Slice it, freeze it. Like that's what I do when I get like a fresh loaf of sourdough, and then I just use it as and when, because if you're getting fresh bread, it will go hard in a few days if you're not using it straight away. So that's something that really does save a lot of money. So that can come in useful.
Yeah, I often find products which tell you they're healthy or not.
No, it's like protein bagels. And they said protein, and they've got they don't have that much protein in them. So yeah, you have to be careful and you have to shop smart for sure. And I think that's what we do at Second Nature, you know, in the health coaches and when we are coaching, is that we want people to be as informed as possible, because we know how much misinformation is out there. So yeah. Oh, we've got a lot of questions in here. Right, let me have a little read through these. What snacks would be recommended as low calorie and filling? Asks Jamie.
It's interesting you talk about low calorie, because on the Second Nature program we advocate against calorie counting. So there's kind of discussions and questions we have around the reasons behind calorie counting. I think the biggest thing around your question, Jamie, is filling. So you want foods that fills you up and keeps you fuller for longer. And typically, when you think of a snack, it could be something that you grab, maybe a piece of fruit. I'm using that as just an example. So maybe you've grabbed an apple. Obviously, the apple has lots of natural sugars in it. So you eat it, you're going to have a high sugar response, and then you might feel hungry again sooner after eating it. But actually, to help you stay fuller for longer, we actually recommend pairing foods together. So like a protein or a fat source alongside your we use the example of the apple. So you could either have some Greek yogurt, or you could have a nut butter of some sort, maybe a peanut butter, almond butter, whatever that might be. So pairing the foods together and adding that protein or fat source is going to help slow down that rate of sugar absorption, help you stay fuller for longer. Although, like when you talk about protein and fat sources, they are naturally seen as higher calorie, but actually you're going to be fuller for longer, so you'll naturally eat less because you're fuller. And so actually over the course of your day, you might, if you do calorie count, we don't say you can't, but we advocate against it, you would potentially see a balance over the course of the day.
Yeah, there's just calorie counting really is a very hard thing to sustain. That's why as a company we don't advocate it, because the whole idea is that we want this to be something that you can use in your as your lifestyle. It's not a diet, it's very much changing your habits. And also with, it's kind of similar to how we balance our plate. was what I would recommend with how you balancing a snack as well, because as Tom's mentioned, pairing foods together can really just help with satiety levels and yeah, keeping you fuller for longer, so that you don't actually need to snack. And then also looking at your main meals as well and thinking, are those balanced so that maybe you don't need to snack as much also.
For sure. And the thing is, you can make snacks really quite cheap. It goes back to what you were saying in the presentation as well, with things like nuts. If you are pairing nuts with a portion of fruit, you know, get the nuts in bigger bags and not smaller bags. I always find the price difference between nuts and seeds between supermarkets and health shops is incredible. You know, you can spend an extra like £4 or £5 on something that's got like 100 grams less. So yeah, definitely buy in bulk. And they're also good for taking on the go. So I do a lot of remote working. I take like a banana and a portion of nuts, or like Baby Bell, another Baby Bell, great source of protein and fat. So, you know, there are so many different ways that we can do it. But going back to the program, speaking to your health coach, we've got so many different guides that we can send with regards to snacking.
Yeah, we've got a really good list of snacks. I just can't think of them
now. So Ida has said, what vegetables can you freeze and how?
I think you can freeze a lot of a lot of vegetables. I think most of them. I don't
think there's one that I've not frozen myself.
Yeah, you can buy quite a lot of prepared vegetables in the supermarkets. I would typically, anything I put in my freezer, I would typically use within 3 months, as like a rule of thumb. But most vegetables, I would say, obviously you'd prepare them, like peel them, chop them up. You like don't chuck a whole butternut squash in the freezer. But in terms of actual vegetables, I think a lot of them you can freeze, and the ones that would freeze well are probably ones with less water as well. But I think most of them you can definitely freeze.
And you can save so much money buying frozen veg as well. I think a lot of people don't realise that frozen veg can be more nutritious than fresh veg, because often if you're buying vegetables that are already frozen and you're putting them straight in the freezer, they tend to be picked and frozen pretty much straight away. So it can increase the nutrient content, which is a fun fact of the day.
Yeah.
Right, we've got some more comments here. Or can you recommend any fruit and veg or meat delivery services that could save money? I keep seeing them online, but I'm sure if they're worthwhile, Brian's asked.
I can try and answer this. Because we don't partner with any of these companies, it's quite hard to name certain ones. However, they can be helpful and convenient. And Georgie touched on about cost comparison. So if you were to get a big box of let's use veg, for example, you could potentially get your whole week's worth of veg in this box. But it could vary in price because you're more than likely paying a premium price for a specific product compared to the prices you might get in the supermarkets. And in the supermarkets now, they're now starting to do like local farmers or wonky veg, and typically they are much cheaper than some of the more bagged products. So it's really important to kind of balance and do a cost comparison. But when it comes to like meat deliveries, again, you're paying for that processing and almost the butchering of the meat. So again, like if you compare a meat delivery service compared to buying your own meats or like roast chickens and doing it yourself and doing that kind of a weekend batch cooking style time, you might save a lot more money than you think. However, if it is more convenient to that way, then by all means.
Yeah, I definitely have members on like in my groups who have been using services because it helps them. They can't necessarily make home cooked meals every single night. And I do think a lot of the companies are trying to be more progressive with sustainability within their companies, and also trying to be cost effective. And I know there's a brand which use kind of odd looking vegetables too, which I think would help the costs potentially with those things. So I would do just some due diligence and look at comparing that to maybe if you were to buy it. So it could work out similar. And if it's kind of the same, but it's helping you be more kind of streamlined with your meal prep and balancing your plates, then it could be a good option for you. But obviously it's very individual. So yeah.
I suppose it's like balancing your priorities in your weekly routine, like is paying a little bit more for some meat or fruit or veg going to help you with your longer term budgeting or balancing your meals? And so is it something you do to help you, or do you try and just shop around a bit more, but you might not have as much time? So
yeah, does saving it being delivered to your doorstep save you that time going to the supermarket? Is that helpful for your routine and your schedule? So I think there's a few things to take into account with.
And something I would say as well is that, because I got a letter from one of them the other day in the post offering me 40% off because I hadn't been back for a while. So that's another thing, if you've not used a subscription service before, the chances are you're probably going to save a high percentage on your first couple of boxes. So you could always, order a couple, see how you get on. You don't have to go back to it afterwards. And again, it's about convenience and what's going to work for you in that moment. And it's a bit of trial and error, isn't it? I think you've got to try something sometimes to see if it's going to work for you or not.
Yeah. And some of these meat delivery services, like you have to keep the food frozen sometimes, and you might need to buy a whole new freezer to just keep your meat delivery box kind of working. So it is, as we said, it's weighing everything up and just seeing what works for you in your routine as best as possible.
Matthew has asked, cheese and crackers, should I give that up? I can wholeheartedly say, Matthew, absolutely not. You do not need to give cheese and crackers up. That could be a very balanced and delicious snack. Again, it depends on the type of cracker that you're using. It's going back to what we were saying earlier about the ingredients, and are there ingredients in those crackers that you don't recognize the name of, or are they 2 or 3 ingredient crackers? So yeah, cheese and crackers, great snack. Definitely don't give them up.
Yeah. Just to caveat that though, so obviously a snack, or if you're having a snack, we obviously want to be making sure we're eating everything in moderation. So you're not having a massive pile of cheese and crackers, you're having just a few to tie you over. Or if you were to have it as a main meal, then how are you balancing the meal around the cheese and crackers? So are you adding some extra fat? Are you adding maybe some protein to that to balance it as best as possible? So definitely don't give it up. We like to crackers it.
But if we're talking about portion sizes, like a general rule that we would say for cheese is around 40 grams, or like the size of a matchbox. With crackers, around 2 to 3 crackers is around the complex carb portion normally, depending on the type of cracker. But again, it depends on whether you're having it as a snack or you're having it as part of a meal. Okay, we've got some other questions. Kim, I hear you with this. It says also, what's the difference between beans, lentils, as they're also complex carbs as well as protein? I find it all a bit confusing. I think this can be really, really confusing. Does Tom, Georgie, would you like to explain this a little further?
He wants to go.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, it's quite confusing because they do definitely cross over. I would say if you take the chickpea curry as an example, because that obviously has the chickpea and obviously the rice, but we want both in the meal because that's the base of the meal. It's a tricky one. I would well, this is when maybe the hunger scale would come in, because to cook that dish, it's hard to portion the chickpeas within stews and soups and things like that, and casseroles. So I would make the chickpea curry dish, and then I would use the rice as the quarter, because that doesn't have any protein in it, and there's protein that comes from chickpeas too. So I would set your rice as quarter of the plate and then put the curry on top, and I would use our hunger scale, which you can ask your health coach about, to think about your hunger levels in this situation, and do you feel that you needed more carbohydrates? Because if we're not using I know that's for carbohydrates. So I would measure it like that. It's really hard. It's a bit of a hard one because they do blend together. Tom, do you want to add to this at all or have any thoughts, Jam?
No, I mean, I think it is a very hard, it's harder to balance the meal, but I think if you are, as we were talking about when I was looking at the meals that all combine together, like as long as you're visually looking at it and being like, yes, your rice is your complex carbohydrates, your lentils, we can see them as some carbohydrates, but because they are going to be higher in protein than your rice, then that's okay. And then where you're adding in your veg and your fat source, but then again zooming out and being like, actually, how is the rest of my day looking? Yeah, like are your other two meals really high in carbs in comparison? So do you maybe, although like carb-free meals are great, you don't advocate them every single day because we found that weight loss isn't always affected by them. However, it's a really good way to balance your meal. So if you were to have a chickpea curry with rice, you could consider having a carb-free meal for breakfast or for lunch to make sure there is that balance if needed. But also, one meal doesn't dictate your progress or success or failure. So enjoy your meal. If you want to have a chickpea curry with rice and you don't really want to balance it and you don't want to worry about that, that's fine. Just as long as you then kind of refocus after and just try and keep that long-term progression, that one meal doesn't equal success or failure, you are going to be in a better mindset around your food and balancing and all that.
And I would say like beans, legumes, pulse, all these ingredients are plants and they are really good for us and they've got protein, they're fibrous. So it's, you know, take that into account as well. It's not like really heavy carb stuff like processed. So don't get maybe too caught up in that. If you are eating your plate and it has chickpea and rice in it and you're full and you've enjoyed it but you're not like overly full, then that's fine. And yeah, maybe don't get too bogged down in it, and as Tom said, just think about your overall balance of that day and week as well.
Absolutely. I think you guys have explained that really well. And yeah, I guess it goes back to as well with, and I speak to a lot of members on the program who do struggle with this because they always say, you know, if I want to have chickpeas and I want to have rice, how do I balance that? And again, it's, you know, if you're thinking about the balanced plate in total, you know, if you were adding rice and you were adding chickpeas, you could use that as 1/4 of the plate and then have the rest of that plate with vegetables. I think that would be a good way to portion it out. So that way, you know, so I would say generally, like, and I sent the guide in the chat as well about calculating carbohydrate servings because a lot of people find this useful. Aiming for around 1 to 2 servings with each meal is absolutely fine. I think, again, going back to the hunger scale and just generally slowing down when you're eating, that can help because we can do it, you know, carbs are so easy to eat and we can eat and eat and eat. And it takes around 20 minutes for our brain to signal to our stomach that we're full. So, you know, if you are having more of a carbohydrate rich meal, slow down and take the time to eat it. You might realize that you're full before, you know, it's over.
Yeah.
I think we've got time for one more question. So we'll go for, let me have a quick read. We've had a couple of questions about margarine and spread, so I think that could be a quick one to quickly discuss. So Lorraine has said, which margarine spread would be a healthy option and a cheaper cost? And then Matthew said, I use an olive oil based spread. Is it actually better?
Nice. Do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll chip in after.
So typically, there's a bit of a kind of debate in research about margarine versus butter, but typically margarines are going to be more processed, so they are technically less healthy than a whole food like butter. Sometimes these margarines, they have these kind of like health boosting kind of slogans or promises. And they don't always do as they say on the label or on their slogan. So it's being really careful with that. But I think the simplest way to do it is a whole food in this sense is butter. And although probably in the past you may have been told not to have butter, I mean, on the program we debunk and we destroy the myth around fat being bad for us. And actually, as we've spoken about, fat is really good for keeping us fuller for longer. So therefore, if you were to just have butter, whether you wanted it salted or unsalted, typically The cheapest way to do this is to just get a block of butter. As simple as rather than getting these plastic spreads that have lots of added water and oil and other ingredients. Keeping it very simple, just a block of butter. You can keep it in the fridge, you can keep it out. But ideally, having a food source with as few ingredients added as possible will be the best way. And it typically tastes a bit nicer as well, but that might just be my preference.
Yeah, I agree, because Kim's just said, please recommend a good butter. And I was going to say, get one that you can put in a butter dish out of the fridge, because it's just butter. There's so many spreadable butters, and the reason why butter is spreadable is, as you said, Tom, it's like the extra oil and the water, and we want to try and stay away as much as we can from refined oils. And if you get a butter that you keep out of the fridge, it doesn't usually have those refined oils.
And I would just say butter is a really good example of white labeling. So where companies use the same like butter product and they will put a different wrap on it and it's the same product. So I use own brand butters from Sainsbury's and things like that. I don't think it needs to be necessarily like a fancy one. And I just wanted to say there are some olive oil spreads out there and I had a member ask me about this the other day, and I went dug a little deeper and I looked at the ingredients. And if you look at ingredients on products, the first ingredient is what makes up that product the most, and it usually will say like 10% or something. And this one had vegetable oils, brackets, rapeseed palm, olive, 10%, and the 90% of that ingredient was emulsifiers and things like that. So stick to whole foods as much as you can. If you can have dairy and butters like that, I would just stick to butter because it does taste a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah, great answer. It's funny that you say that, because it's just reminded me of a comment that a member had said to one of our coaches today about peanut butter, and sent a peanut butter, and peanut was the last item on the ingredients list, and there was about 100 different types of sugar in there. So always check the ingredients list. And to round it off, we've actually had some really, really nice comments in the chat. But Linda said, thank you, everyone. I've learned a lot from all the questions and answers tonight. So thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope you found it helpful. Thank you, Georgie and Tom, for a fantastic presentation. And yeah, really enjoyed the Q&A. Have a great evening, and we will see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.